Been a shitty day all the way around.
Welcome back, everybody, to Real Estate Unlimited. And as you have it, James Franklin had the opening remarks on what type of day it's been today. Renee Hackett's our cheerleader. She's keeping us going. And we'll be back after this countdown right here. And we're back, everyone. So welcome back. James, how you doing? Renee, what's going on?
Making it.
Awesome. So in today's episode of the podcast, I'd like to go over there's been a question for the NC. I love these little NC realtors updates they give us on our mails. And the question was, do I have to report that my listing is under contract to MLS before the due diligence fee is paid? And this happened in April 28th of 2022. And the direct question, that was the title. The direct question here, and I'd love to know your guys' response on this. My seller accepted an offer to purchase and contract, Form 2-B, on his property yesterday, and I called the buyer's agent right away to give him the good news. I asked that the due diligence fee check be overnighted to the seller, and I give him the seller's address. The seller just called me to say that the due diligence fee check has not arrived yet. I don't have any reason to believe that the buyer won't pay the due diligence, but I want to know if I have to change the status on the MLS before the due diligence fee has been delivered. The seller wants me to continue showing the property in case a contract falls through. Now, I do have an answer. I can read the answer, or we can discuss the topic. It's up to you guys.
You definitely have to put it in MLS as due diligence pending. It's an executed contract. Once it is signed by both parties, it's an executed contract.
I tend to agree because and plus there's been an ongoing effort by the MLS to reflect the status step by step of a listing as accurately as possible.
I mean, the seller actually can go back, and if the buyer does not produce the due diligence fee, the seller can sue the buyer for that due diligence amount because it's an executed contract.
That's right. Yep. Signatures on both sides of the contract.
That's correct.
If the seller's worried about starting all over, I would just tell them, don't worry about that. That's all I can say. Don't worry about that. We'll put it back up.
I mean, once you also, like you said, that she sent an email to the buyer's agent. So usually when if I'm on the listing side, if I go under contract, I will send either a text or email, some form of writing stating, hey, we need to get the due diligence within the next 24 hours delivered. So once you do that, they have to do that. And if they don't, then you can, essentially void the contract. You can get out of the contract, put it back on the market.
And maybe even encourage them to get it to you quicker by, meeting them somewhere, the buyer agent, hey, I'll go ahead and sign the receipt page that I received it so I can then pass it on to my seller if that gives them a greater confidence in it.
I'm agreeing with both of you guys right now, and I would like to go ahead and read the answer here. The answer to your question is yes. The status of the listing changes when it goes under contract, just like you said, and your MLS rules require listing agents to report status change to the MLS within a certain number of hours after they have occurred. You know what? someone else, we talked about this in my group Tom Ferry discussion this morning. They said a lot of them have 48 hours to make the change. Do you guys know our current hours that we can wait?
We don't really have a current hours unless you send the demand for it. Like, you have to give them notice that you need it. I don't know if there's really a time limit on it, but I had the instance where that happened where my buyer was actually out of town and she wasn't going to be back until 3 or 4 days later to get the check, and she couldn't send it wire because her bank was nowhere near where she was at, and she had to appear in person to do the wire. So the listing agent sent us a 24-hour notice to get the due diligence back so he could terminate the contract.
Gotcha.
I would say I don't think there is an hour like any kind of a rule.
Mm-mm.
There's a number of hours. I do know that if it's after 3 days, then that's way too long. And I would say to take the high road as a rule of thumb. You're under contract, and most of us have it in our app on our phone. So even if you're out of pocket and you don't have internet and you don't have your laptop, you got to take the high road and go on your Matrix app and go ahead and change the status to due diligence.
Okay, I just looked on North Carolina Real Estate Board, and it is 5 days unless the agent gives 24-hour written notice to the other agent. It is that amount of time.
5 days?
Yes, sir.
I would
5 days.
have said 3 days is too long.
Whoa. So I write James an offer.
That's correct.
He signs the offer as the seller.
Yep.
He has 5 days to tell me.
No, per the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, you have 5 days from the date that the contract was executed to deliver due diligence, unless the agent, which would be the listing agent, sends a written notice, email, text, stating that they need the due diligence within 24 hours. But you still have to put it due diligence pending as soon as the contract is executed in the MLS.
And I think you got it reversed. I was thinking it used to be 5 days and it's been whittled down to 3 days. But I think because of COVID, it was protracted from 3 days to 5 days. I think I had it backwards. That's why I've got that 3 days in my mind. Because I thought
it was 3 days too.
I think the old
I should know
deadline
that.
was 3 days. But when COVID came along, because of delays, I think it was stretched out to 5 days. But I've still got.
Yeah, that might be so, but it's 5 days now.
Mind, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because it went down to 2. It went down to 3. James, you're right. It did go down to 3.
Yeah, but it went to 5 days.
Gotcha.
It's at 5 days now.
Gotcha.
Wow. Yeah.
So let's go back here.
It's all about good faith. So I would say that as soon as you go under contract, change the status.
You have to. That's the real estate commission law. I mean, they could get you if you don't. There's a lot of agents that do not do that because they worry that the due diligence fee won't be delivered and they'll have to put it back on the market, and they don't want their listing to go back on the market, but they're not in compliant when they do that.
Yeah, and they're afraid of the appearances of things.
Correct.
It's the seller's fault, or they withheld information, some kind of, something went wrong where the buyer, it was not to the buyer's liking. Something occurred that the buyer didn't like, and the buyer withdrew as a result. That's what they think it has the appearance of. So they don't want to. They want to wait until they get that money. Yeah, but it should be changed. You should change it as soon as you go into contract.
Yeah, according to the unnumbered paragraph appeared immediately above the signature date form line in the 2T, the offer becomes a binding contract on the effective date. And it goes on to say that the buyer's failure to timely deliver any fee, deposits, or any other payment provided for in the offer does not prevent the offer from becoming a binding contract. The effective date defined in the paragraph 1G is the date that the offer has been signed by both parties and accepted and has been communicated to the party making the offer. In your case, the seller signed the offer and you communicated that fact to the buyer's agent placed yesterday. Thus, the property went under contract yesterday. The status of your listing changed yesterday, and you must report that to the MLS within the number of hours established by the MLS, notwithstanding the fact that the due diligence fee hasn't been paid yet. Note that a buyer's failure to promptly deliver the due diligence fee after the contract has been formed gives the seller the right to quickly terminate the contract. You can read about that in the previous questions and answers by clicking here. So if they do not turn in, this is my question. If they do not turn in the due diligence fee, they get you guys you got the listing, the buyer's agent gives you a contract, the seller signed it, you're under contract. You have 5 days to get the check, right? Unless it's written in writing. The buyers do not give the check at all. They just don't give it. The seller has the right to terminate. Is the seller also entitled to the due diligence and earnest money?
Yes, absolutely. It's a binding contract. He can take them to court and sue them. And I would say his chances of winning are very great.
You got it on page 1 of the contract.
Even after the seller decides to terminate.
And I'll tell you too, as an agent, if your buyer hands you over the due diligence check and you're en route to deliver that due diligence check and the buyer calls and tells you, I've changed my mind, don't deliver that due diligence check, you have to give that check back to them if you have not handed it over to the other agent.
You got to be obedient. Got to be obedient to the client within the parameters of the law.
Yep. So if I still have that check, because this happened to me, if I still have that check in my presence, I have to give it back to the buyer because I called my BIC and the BIC's like, yeah, you got to give it back. You can't deliver it to the listing agent.
That's
you
right.
have to give it back.
That's
because
right.
you represent the buyer, you are an extension of the buyer. And
Correct.
if the wishes is to, I want my check back, then look at it like this. You're like their right arm. You can't cut off your right arm. You're an extension of them. So if they want that check back, you got to give it back.
Yeah. Because if they get sued, they get sued. You don't get sued.
Correct.
They didn't turn in the money.
Correct.
You just followed the law. You followed your client's obedience.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted their money back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good to know. I think a lot of newer agents should really crack down on this. I think this is a good topic to talk about. Any other interesting due diligence quirks that you've had here recently?
Well, I have one right now where we tried to negotiate, and I told my seller in advance that, and they actually, the buyer offered zero due diligence. They offered several thousand in earnest money. And my seller want the due diligence. And I told them, look, I can fight for it. I can negotiate it for you. I think they're going to stand firm. Well, why, James? I'm entitled to my due diligence. My brother told me, my cousin told me, my son told me I should never do a deal without due diligence. Yeah, but the due diligence period is 5 days. And they offered earnest money. So because there's such a very extremely short due diligence time frame, then you're gonna, chances are, if the deal goes sour, you get that earnest money anyway.
Yeah.
So wait, you're saying, so I had another agent that did not do due diligence, a due diligence period. And the real estate hotline told her that since you did not do a due diligence period, she actually had the listing side of this, not the buyer side. The buyer side did not do a due diligence period. They did not do a date at all. Mm-hmm. No money, no date for due diligence period. Mm-hmm. So they had some issues. And anyway, they ended up closing, but she called the real estate hotline, North Carolina Real Estate Commission, and they told her, since it was not listed a date on there, that the due diligence period went all the way to closing.
Okay,
the attorney told them.
Not similar to that scenario. This had a due diligence period. It was
Okay, but it was only 5 days. It
only
was listed as 5 days.
right.
Yeah.
And as you
Yeah.
know, once you get past that due diligence, if they back out after the due diligence end date, and if the buyer backs out, then the seller's entitled to the earnest money. So even though they didn't offer any due diligence, zero due diligence, there was a 5-day due diligence time frame, and they did offer earnest money.
Right. So
So
they had
don't worry about it.
just so I can be on the same page, James.
Mhm.
They have zero due diligence money,
Right.
but a due diligence time frame that will protect their earnest money, and that time frame was only 5 days.
Exactly.
Yes, that is that you can do that. Yes, correct.
Exactly.
Yes, that's correct. And
So
since the time frame is,
that was
excuse
why I
me,
tried to tell my seller, you can't just look at numbers. You got to look at time frames. You got to look at concessions. You got to look at the whole ball of wax and just and determining what's going to be the best deal for you. So that just so happened that they offered that buyer offered the most money, but they did offer zero due diligence. But then again, we had to look at other factors, other components of the offer, such as the shortness of the due diligence period and the amount of earnest money too. And what kind of an offer was it? Was it cash? Did it involve a lender or not? So we had to look at those elements, and we decided to the seller decided to take that offer. She countered back, but I told her that it probably wasn't going to work, and it really didn't work. And I did fight for it. That's my job. But
absolutely.
insisted. They said, James, the buyer said, look, James, and the buyer was unrepresented too. So yeah, and so the buyer said, look, we want this deal to go through as smooth as silk. You know, that's why we're offering you the deal with such a short due diligence time frame.
Are you starting to see any the due diligence to come more of a balance like it was, or not really?
Not really. That's an outlier. That was an aberration.
I agree with you. I don't think it's quieted down. I mean, I remember when it was what 150. I mean, I remember selling one home here in Winston. It was like $150 due diligence.
Not anymore.
Yeah, I had one maybe a couple of months ago, $8,000 due diligence.
Wow,
they were serious, and I represent. They were serious.
Wow.
Yeah.
In this due diligence time frame, if you guys don't mind, it is a time where the seller is going to take the home off the market and allow the buyers to do the inspections, all that they need to do through that time period. And the buyer can walk away. Those are you guys listening in due diligence period. The seller allows the buyer to do all the inspections he needs to do, he or she, and then they come. If you decide to walk away as a buyer, it protects your earnest money. So if you walk away in due diligence period, you will get your earnest money back. And in this market, I don't say too much, to be honest with you, because it's so competitive. People are putting enormous amount of money down. I mean, ridiculous amount of money down. The 50,000 due diligence has hit the triad finally. You know, it's all over Raleigh, it's all over Charlotte, and I was filling in for Bick the other day, it was a couple weeks ago, and an agent came up to me. They didn't get the contract. We're discussing the means, and the person put $50,000, and they still didn't get it. You know, so that's just a big risk. So once the market cools down, we'll obviously see that number balance out with earnest money and due diligence when there's more inventory on the market. I don't see that happening anytime soon at this market round table. What do you think? James, Meg, how's it going? Meg says hello, by the way. What do you think? Meg's a big supporter, her and her husband, Andrew. I mean, do you see it slowing down anytime soon? I don't, to be honest with you.
You know, man, that's like trying to figure out who's going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the season. So, regular season. I mean, you can listen to Stephen A. Smith. You can listen to Shannon Sharp, Skip Baylor. You can listen to all these guys. all you want to. Michael Strahan, you can put the figures in yourself, but there are just so many factors that are involved that are unpredictable. You got to look at the health of the players. You got to look at injuries that occur that were unforeseen, during the games. You got to look at scandals. Somebody may have been suspended because they did something, with their baby mama. There are so many factors that are involved, and the real estate market is not it's not dissimilar. It's not unlike that.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many factors that are involved.
But
You got interest rates, sure. You got inventory, sure. You got
escalation clauses with new builders. Have you guys seen that where the builder?
Oh yeah, every one that you do's got the escalation clauses.
You got more savvy negotiations like the escalation clause, the appraisal gap clause. It's so many factors involved. It's hard to see. I don't foresee it. I don't see anything inside. The only thing that's being done now to quell demand and make demand come down to supply is that the Federal Reserve is bumping up the interest rates so that some of the demand, the pool of buyers in the demand market can bail out, can say no, interest rates are too high, and so force demand to equal out to supply. That's the only thing I see that's being attempted right now. But what's the effect of it right now? Very little.
I see.
I don't think it's very efficacious. It's helping, but it's not. I don't think it's helping a lot.
Right.
Then of course you got the COVID in there, folk. New construction going on, and people not wanting to involve in new construction and the build and the manufacture of hardware and tools, things like that. People get COVID, they get sick, they go out, they die. Some of them survive, but they say, I ain't going back to work. So that's causing a shortage of production as well.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I wanted to say, I have a home inspector, Zach Patterson. He's actually, I think he's watching, but I know he just liked the link. So if you're doing a new construction, and Zach does this, and I want him on the show. We actually plan to get him on here to talk about pre-drywall inspections. He does pre-drywall inspections, and I recommend every one of you guys out there listening to this right now, if you're buying new construction, get a pre-drywall inspection, pay the money, and get him to inspect, because he's going to inspect electrical, he's going to inspect plumbing, he's going to inspect on how they're framing your house if it's done correctly, and then whenever he points them out, get a good real estate agent to represent you in new construction. But well, I don't need a real estate agent. It's new construction. Yes, you do. You need someone who's going to be coming in and checking on that house. And after that inspection report's done, you want to go in and make sure that they've done the corrections. Because if the plumbing is not correct, you ain't going to notice it in that first year if it's got a small leak.
Yeah, that's the. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Renee.
No, I was just going to add that the new constructions, a lot of times the inspections are been the worst of even the existing, because they don't, I guess they just hire these contractors and they go in and they don't really do, like we've had electrical not done right. I've come across a lot of issues on new construction. Yeah, and thankfully all of my clients, took my advice and did get an inspection.
You absolutely knew your own inspection when you are undergoing a new construction, because for new construction, when an inspector comes out, first of all, with the new construction, there are no disclosures. There's no residential property owners and association disclosure because it's brand new. So there's no disclosure. Okay. When as far as that's concerned. So customarily, a public inspector is assigned to come out there and to look at the property. And there may be two inspections, a preliminary and then a second inspection. But the thing about it is that when the public inspector comes out from the city/county, these people are overworked. And so, and they're human beings. And because they're overworked and they're human beings, they may be very likely to overlook something that should not have been overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, because of the riskiness involved with that, it comes down to the new homeowner discovering something faulty about the property that should have been detected and wasn't.
Yeah.
Case in point, this happened to me when I was dealing with a new construction about 2 years ago. I urged my buyers to get a private inspector. It's only a couple $100, and it's better to do that and be cautious and to know what's going on than to say, "Oh, I want to save myself a couple $100,000," and then you got to pay a couple $1,000 later on to fix the problem. And so I discovered, I went up into the attic. The R factor was incorrect in the attic. And
What's the R factor, James?
it's the thickness of the insulation
Oh,
in the attic, and it was wrong. It was incorrect.
it's new
And
construction.
right, it's new construction.
Yeah, you see, there you go, guys.
So I
Listening?
urged him to get an inspector. We got an inspector, and another thing that tipped me off: the garage door that was on the side, the regular door, garage door, not the overhead. It had a big old hole in the door. They forgot to put a knob in the door. They put the deadlock on, but they forgot to put the doorknob on.
They're polishing it up, James. They're
Yeah.
polishing it up.
So after I urged the buyers to get their own inspector, well, we found out that three of the outlets in the dining room didn't even work because they hadn't even been connected with those what do you call it? Those little the nut connectors. The nuts.
Yes, or for safety reasons.
So behind the wall, they hadn't been connected. That was the easy fix. They just took the outlet plates off and they reached in there and they were able to do that without cutting the drywall. But we discovered that. So it wasn't even connected. And had the power been turned off, that could be a fire hazard. So you got to get your own inspector, folks.
Oh, go ahead.
I seen a TikTok of a home inspector. He's not in our state, but there was a new construction home, and he did a TikTok on the inside. You can clearly see it's drywalled, real tall ceilings. It's drywalled all the way up to the ceiling, but on the outside there's a window. That's like 2 layers of windows, but on the outside there's a window. So he goes back inside, and it's drywalled over the window, but on the outside the window's there.
Wow.
And he was saying, this is why new construction, you need an inspector.
What in the knives out was that about?
I don't know, but it was pretty comical.
Wow.
That's just an accident. That's just water damage waiting to happen.
That's just your drywall people really not paying attention.
Yeah.
People are a lot of times they'll think new construction we don't need. Why do we need an inspection? Why pay the extra money? Understand that these new constructions, they're on a timeline and they subcontract a lot of work in and out. These guys are just here to just put it together. If they're going to cut corners, they're going to cut corners because on their heads are like, we got to get it up and go to the next site, get it up and go to the next site.
Yeah.
And I used to sell shoes at Red Wing Shoes in Durham. And that was that was the funnest job I ever had, guys. I mean, I'm telling you, that was a fun job as being a shoe salesman. If you haven't been a shoe salesman, go be a shoe salesman for a little bit. and first job in retail sales. And my boss would say, I'm more concerned about quality than production. So if it takes you a little bit of time to work with the customer, I'd rather you work with the customer with a little bit extra time to make sure he gets the right shoe for his foot than just throwing a shoe on, get him to pay, and then he's coming back within 2 weeks because his feet hurt because you didn't take that extra second, that extra 5 minutes to evaluate his foot and his shoe. Now and at Red Wing, we weren't doctors or anything, but they did teach us how to look at shoes to determine roughly what last of shoe you should bring them, because shoes are made on something called last, and that's a whole other topic.
Okay.
And so, but we were taught to bring the shoe the customer wants always, and then bring the shoe that that we could evaluate with and see which one he liked best, he or she. So, but yeah, that's awesome. Well, yeah.
I just want to add, in this era of COVID, because it's the opposite of a job shortage. You've got a job surplus. You got jobs that can't be filled. So what does that mean to the people who do have jobs in these various environments? Home improvement, you can't find anybody to help you. Restaurants, and the list goes on and on. What it means is that they're short-staffed. And because they're short-staffed, they're overworked. They're overworked, quality declines. So it's really incumbent upon a buyer to get a home inspector, because you don't want to cut corners, because the people who put the house together may have even inadvertently cut corners. And another thing too, I was looking for a blank professional services disclosure. A professional services disclosure is a form that is a checklist of various vendors that the buyer and the seller may need to come to a complete transaction of the sale of a home. Pest control inspector, radon inspector, HVAC inspector, the attorney, and the inspector, the home inspector, as well as other vendors. And as an agent, and this is just from an agent perspective now that I'm going to say this, if your buyer insists on not getting a home inspector, make sure they've initialed it and they've waived it. And you make a copy of that, because if anything goes wrong with that house, the first person they're going to come to is you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always send all of my clients that North Carolina Real Estate Board of Commission has that why you should get a home inspection brochure, and I make them sign that to show that I give you the information. And I also make them, if they deny, they don't want one, I make them say initial that they don't want one, but I also make them sign that brochure that tells all about home inspection.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I just pulled it up. So there's accountant, CPA, tax advisory. I would prefer that with, that's usually used with a 1031 exchange. Appraisal, attorney, title exam, title insurance, seller documents, home warranty. And then it goes down to inspections, home, HVAC, and HVAC is not part of home, correct? Right? The home inspector may check the HVAC, but bringing in a separate person to look at the HVAC, that's where that falls under.
Can I comment on that?
Please do.
So the home inspector, he does check to see if it's putting out heat, but say you get an inspection in the wintertime, they can't check the air conditioning because it's not going to come on, and they'll tell you they will not do that. Yep. They'll also do the same thing on the heat. So, I had an instance where we closed in December. It's now springtime. It's getting hot. The air conditioner didn't work. And I had emails back prior to where I had told the client, this is an older system. We probably need to have an HVAC company come out, because the inspector, he's not going to be able to check the air conditioning because it's two separate units. And she said, no, I don't want to spend the money. I don't want to do it.
Go.
Okay. So she initialed, no, she did not want to do that. And we also had our emails back and forth. So when it got hot, guess what? Her air conditioner didn't work. So she sends me an email and says, hey, do you have that inspection report where the home inspector came to my house? My air conditioner's not working. He missed it. So I went back and sent her the emails, and I said, the home inspector did not check your air conditioner because it wasn't cold and it was too cold for the air conditioner to come on. And he stated that in the inspection report. And she was very upset about that. And I explained to her that this is why we had this in place. I mean, she was eventually okay with it, but you have to be diligent with your buyers and explain that to them very clearly, even though I had explained it to her, I sent her the email. She's like, oh, yeah, I remember now that you did try to get me to do that, and I didn't want to spend the money. I wish I'd spent the money now. Same way with home warranty. She didn't get a home warranty. So now the cost of all that falls on her.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up, Renee. And it goes on to pool and spa, radon, which is a big one.
Yep.
I recommend them. And there's also a map for you guys listening in and new agents. You can go to Radon, North Carolina. There's a map where it shows where there's heavy radon and heavy not. I'm not saying that's to get you out of an inspection. It just gives you a little bit of insight of where you're at and what is traditionally radon levels around. Septic, well water quality, wood pest infestation. Definitely want to do that one. Reinspection of agreed upon repairs, if applied. I've never had to use that one. Have you guys used that one before?
I have. Yes,
Yep.
I have.
Yep.
I do that quite often because you have these flippers that do the repair work themselves, and they don't use a licensed person to do it, and you go back and have your home inspector do the reinspection. It's not done properly.
Yep.
I've had that several times happen. And the home inspectors don't charge a big, huge amount to go back and check something. I don't know. You said you had a home inspector on here. I don't know if he's still on here or not, but it's not that big of it's not a huge amount for them to go back out and check. Mm-hmm. And also, too, I want to go back to the well inspection, the well/water inspection. A lot of agents, I think, miss this one, too. So you can do a water sample. There's a guy that does water samples, but there's also well inspections. Like I just had a house that the bladder on the pressure tank of the well was not properly working. It was messed up. So we did pay to get a well inspection, which they inspect the actual well, the pump, the pressure tank, and everything going up to the house. And I know a lot of agents do not do that. And I've heard a couple of agents that have said, well, I don't know. They don't have no pressure. They moved in. And I said, well, did you do a well inspection? Yeah, we did a well inspection. I said, did you test the water or did you actually do a well inspection? They're like, no, we just tested the water. That's a well inspection. I said, that is not a well inspection at all.
That's water.
That's a water test. Yes, exactly. So, I mean, if you do a well, I just had a well. I try to get all my clients to do a well inspection. It's $375 and it includes the water test.
Oh,
a water test alone is right at 200 to 225. So it's not that much more to get the well inspection.
Mm-mm.
right.
And a pressure tank is $1,000 to replace. We just did one. So we had to negotiate the seller out to pay that, which is,
And it's better to pay for inspections and then remediate those things that are in need of being repaired.
And I know a lot of buyers now are worried that sellers aren't fixing things, and they are true. There are a lot of sellers that are not fixing things. But then again, if you're doing an appraisal gap where you're paying more money than the house, I tell them, well, you're agreeing to pay $10,000 more than, appraisal value. Yeah, we're going to make them fix this stuff. That's why we need an inspection. There's the inspector right there.
That's him right there.
Yeah, so he can enlighten us on the re-inspections.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So, what question did you have about re-inspection?
We were talking about what was the question again, Renee?
So you were talking about, you were going over the disclosure and you said re-inspection. You said, I've never had a buyer to use a re-inspection. Have any of y'all? And I said, yeah, actually I do get the home inspector to go out and do a re-inspection on some repairs because these sellers will try to fix it themselves or not get it properly done just to save money and do it themselves. So something, the little stuff I probably wouldn't get re-inspected, but we had a foundation issue one time where the pillars were not properly done. And we paid to go get the home inspector to re-inspect it. And of course it wasn't done properly. I mean, so instances like that. And you need to get your home inspector that did the original inspection to go back and check the seller's work if it's something major. And they don't. How much would you charge for a reinspection?
Depending on the scope of work. So let's say I heard earlier you mentioned something about the well equipment. A bladder was busted, something like that. So if we had multiple aspects that needed reinspection, then there'd be a separate fee for that. But typically, a reinspection is anywhere between $150 and $250. Like I say, depending on the scope of work. To just come in and check the well equipment, that's going to be closer to $150. If we're doing a whole foundation, like say if you had a major repairs that needed to be done, the way that I would handle that is I would take the original report and the photos of the defects that I had and compare them to new. So I would find those areas that were defective, go in and take new photos and compare those to it and give a description of the either proper or improper repairs that were completed. Something like that would be a larger process, and that would be closer to $250.
Yeah, and see, I try to encourage, and I don't know what y'all do, but I try to encourage my buyers, if they can do it, is to just ask for a monetary amount, because we all know when you're selling a home and you have to make a repair, you're not going to make the repair like the buyer would make the repair. Does that make sense? You're going to go the cheapest route that you can go.
Yeah.
You know, even on this well inspection we just did, my buyer is doing the they just ask for a monetary amount so they can get who they want, the well inspector, a certified well company, to come out and do the, you know, the pressure tank and the bladder. Had the seller done it, he would have probably tried to do it himself, because he's, you know, obviously he's done a lot of things himself, and a lot of people do that. So we didn't want to get into that situation because it's kind of a major repair.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, and it's you know, more than likely it's a replacement. And you know, it could be easy enough depending on what your experience is with this stuff. I mean, I've seen a lot of things, but you know, what you'll see is somebody's uncle's cousin knows how to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's brother is a handyman. You get all sorts of mess going on, especially with plumbing, because it seems easy. You can look up things on YouTube, and it seems like it's something that you could handle, but you're using the wrong materials and they don't bond together well. I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on of homeowner defects, you know, homeowner so-called fixes. So I get it.
And those of you guys tuning in, what I love about Zach's one of the home inspectors that I use. He used to build homes. So he knows when he looks at a home, how it should be done correctly. And I love that you do that. And he's got a great social media presence. And I actually discovered his pre-drywall, that he does that inspection through his social media, because a lot of inspectors, even if they do it, they don't take that strategy. That's a marketing skill. And then I realized how important it was. I mean, the last house I sold, he did an inspection on it. It was a Horton home. He ran we're losing him. He ran the water for an hour. He ran the shower waters for an hour, and he found a leak coming out. And I was like, who would do that? Like, I take a shower. I mean, like, I just never would have thought about that. I thought that was pretty amazing.
And two, you do not have to be a general contractor to be a home inspector. A lot of home inspectors are not general contractors and have never built a house.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. I've done things wrong and done them right. And that's pretty well how we learned in the field.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Well, we're getting short on time here. I want to thank everyone who came today. My friend Tony's hopping on. Let's see if we can get Tony on here. Let's see if Tony's coming on here.
Okay.
Tony,
what's going on? What's going on? Yes, I am.
Awesome. Everyone, this is Tony Barbarino. He is on the national podcast with me that we do twice a week. He is a real estate agent from California. James, you were just in California.
Napa Valley, baby.
Yeah,
I was toggling between Frisco and Napa Valley. Great time.
Beautiful weather.
How far are you from Napa Valley, Tony?
Oh, Jesus, that's above San Francisco. I'm down by just under Los Angeles. So that's like a full half a state away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's misty and foggy and cold, and right now it's 75 here and sunny. It's called the sun tax. You pay extra to always have this good weather. See? Humidity. Humidity. What's that? What?
Yeah.
We know all about
Mosquitoes
humidity
hurt
out
it.
here.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well,
Yeah, Tony, we were talking about due diligence today. We were talking about home inspections, pre-drywall inspections, giving pointers to real estate agents out here. Tony is from New Jersey originally, so he's East Coast.
Hey, by the way, that thing, I got to give you credit in front of your fans. Pre-drywall inspection, especially on new home builds, that is new to me. I just learned that. Now I'm going to add that to my list of why you want a real estate agent when you're buying a brand new home. And even though they say you don't need one, but I'm going to add that in there. Did you know about a pre-drywall inspection and what problems you can find or avoid? Oh, you didn't know that, did you? Well, ask the selling agent about it. And they're probably not going to offer it because they want to close the home. So I like to say on a brand new home, not to arbitrage the conversation, but on a brand new home build, while they're excited and they're fantasizing about the results, you can come in as the a-hole and look around and go, what's that? What's this? What's this?
Yeah.
What about that? Hey, because it ain't my house, right?
Yeah.
So I think I have 10, 11, or 12 reasons why you would want an agent on those new builds. And the problem is some of these big shots out here building don't give commissions, at least right now, because everyone's just throwing money at them. So now it's like, well, you want me to go with you on a new home build? We'll sign my buyer broker agreement. I need, 2% from you. And they go, wait, they don't give commissions? So now what? So what an ugly mess. I can't believe these big builders would do that. But that pre-drywall inspection, I don't care who invented it, but it came from you, Paul. So that is genius. That is a genius specific tip, like someone who invented the paperclip.
Well, thank you so much. But
Yeah, seriously.
I was scrolling through TikToks and I saw Zach and he did it and I was like, oh man, that's genius. And he saved my buyers a lot of problems, so thank you.
Yep.
Well, we are getting close to time here. Tony, stay on. I want everyone to information. Renee, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Cell phone 336-302-5803.
Awesome. And how about you, James?
336-978-8491.
Yep. And then Tony, if you guys got anybody in California?
They can go to my website. It's my name. It's right there with no space. TonyBobarino.com. Everything you need there is right there easily.
Tony does great videos, podcasting. He's a scientist and he's also was an actor. Well, I don't know is or was. You still got it. Yeah. And so it's always a lot of fun. And both of these fantastic people with me, Renee and James, have been with me since the beginning. I started doing live calls and we used to do calls together and different podcast episodes before it actually became Real Estate Unlimited. And so this is the crew right here. And we're missing a few people. Evelyn didn't make it today. And I'll try to get Gary on, but that's okay next time. So, but anyway, well, guys, thank you for being a part of the podcast. I appreciate everything, and we will catch you next time.
All right, man.
See ya.
All right, we'll see you, man.
Okay, see you guys later.